you got these parts. What about parts that you didn't get? How did you deal with that?
When I first heard about it, the interview, I said, okay, this is a door. And then if I didn't get it, I said, okay, a door closed, and then another one opens. So
Right.
just like it never happened.
You just said an interview. Most people don't call them interviews. What do they call them?
Auditions.
Why do you call them interviews?
Because it's,
Because I made you call it an interview.
yeah.
Right.
Because you made
So
me
to be
call
really
it an
clear.
interview.
And this is an example of how I wanted to have her here and talk about how in my everyday life I use the energetic principle. So even though most of the world would call it an audition, all the people that she works with, whether it be a manager, an agent, or a mom, it has to be an interview. She's actually going on an interview because we're interviewing to see if it's a good fit for both her and for them. There's been some circumstances where
It's been a good fit for them,
It's
but
been a
not
good fit for
you.
them.
Not
and
for me.
Daddy had to get involved, and you no longer were doing it, right?
Yep.
Lead in a movie. But that was something that wasn't a good fit as far as the energy of it was concerned.
Yeah.
And when we ask somebody to audition, what we're basically saying is, are you good enough? And my rule was if you wanted to do this and follow this path and do this, that nobody would tell her she's good enough but herself. So interviewing is kind of how we refer to it. And remember the time when you came back and you didn't get the interview and you were a little
Yeah.
sad? Do you remember what I said to you about the circle?
Yes. You said that they may be looking for a square or a triangle or a rectangle, but you're a circle, and circles are special. So they may not be looking for a circle, but someone out there is.
Right. I wanted to explain to her that no matter how amazing of a circle she is, a circle is never going to be a triangle. So if they're looking for a triangle, so it has nothing to do with value. So I think it's important. So I think a lot of people, when they go out into this field, they're so seeking validation externally
Yeah.
that they lose that, and they lose that kind of connection.
This is really, really very cool. This is really exciting. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I'm really happy to be talking to you. I have so many questions for you. What you do is so incredibly fascinating, but let's start with Evolve
Okay.
and how that came about. You've been doing this for a while now with Evolve, so what was the impetus for it?
So the impetus was I didn't want to do this on television. I wanted to pioneer it online, and I wanted to do more than I was able to do on TV. And I think on TV that you have a lot of restrictions and constraints, and the creativity for me was like, this is what you do, and you have to answer to like a network and people and executives. And at that time, almost a decade ago, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do all of this. So I built a studio, and we are doing it, live, and we have done live events, and now we have a community and people from all over the world, and we talk about stuff like what's going on now with the election, and we talk about energy and energetic principles, so astrology, numerology, people get read. So it's an amazing family.
Has it really made you reconnect, or not reconnect, I should say, but brought you closer to your audience?
For me, this is my 32nd year of doing this. So it's a long time. And I call it old school. When you're old school doing this work, you have to create a wall between you and your client. Like, I was never allowed to connect with my clients. It was like, you did your job, you did the reading, and then you get out of the way and you let their life happen. There was no Twitter or social media. There was no AOL. There was nothing where you would be able to engage with people. And then even if there was, you're not allowed to do that. So I came into the digital arena kicking and screaming, feeling I'm not allowed. You know what I'm saying? If, for those folks that are, old school Catholic, you would know what I mean when I say you're not allowed to receive communion on Sunday if you missed Mass without going to confession, kind of not allowed. That's what I felt. And what it's done for me is it's allowed me to evolve. It's allowed me to recognize that I've established a credibility, that people know my integrity, they know where I'm coming from, they know the ethics that I'm bringing to this, and that now I can create this forum to connect with people on social media and bring them to johnedward.net, where Evolve happens. And it's amazing. There's a group of Evolve members that are traveling for one of their birthdays, all because they've met and connected in the community. So it's more like a family.
It's really interesting what you said earlier, that when you meet someone, you have to kind of retreat within yourself, so you don't read them instantly, because I imagine that would be like a mass headache.
I have
time.
had more people divulge their deepest and darkest secrets to me because they think that I already know them. And they'll say to me, well, you probably already know this. And then they tell me, and I have to have that moment of like, oh, okay. I didn't know that, and I'm like, now I do, and what do I do with this? It's like every time I look at you, I'm going to be thinking you did X, Y, and Z. So I tell people that when I'm not doing this, I'm off duty. Like I'm not walking around the streets of New York on. I use the analogy of a surgeon. A surgeon does surgery in the operating room. They go into the OR, they gown up, mask, scrub in, they do the surgery, they help the person, then they leave, and that's it. So I feel like there's a time and a place for a reading. I don't think, the supermarket or the streets of Manhattan are the time and place for reading. And I think it's important not to accost people and give them information. I think it has to happen, time and place. And I think it's an energetic form of surgery. So for me, it's important to honor that.
How are you able to shut it off, though?
Meditation and prayer and visualization. So like if I need to flick it on, I can. And it's like when you're not doing surgery, you still have the knowledge of what that is. And there have been moments where I've been sitting in a meeting and a person will say, are you getting anything on me? And I'll say, no. And then they'll start asking me questions. And while they're asking me questions, then all of a sudden it's kind of taking me down that path. And then if they give me permission, then I will say, if you will allow me to discuss this with you, I will. And then I can turn that on. And then sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't.
Now, you're a psychic medium.
Correct.
You're incredibly established in your field. I think you're the guy.
Well, I've been around for a while. Let's put it that way.
No, but I mean, you've done Dr. Phil, you've read Anderson Cooper. You're it. What is your process like when you meet someone and you do a reading? Do you go in blind or do you prep for it?
Always blind. There's no prep work. If I was going to be sitting with somebody, like for example, if somebody was an astrologer, they need to have their astrological chart. If you're working with a numerologist, they need to know your birthday and know your name so they could do that. When you're working with a psychic, you should go in with no information. And the reason why is you want a blank canvas upon which you can paint or allow the information to develop. And I like to use the analogy, again, going old school. There used to be these things called cameras with film, and people would go into a dark room to develop.
Wait, like the same time
way
there was a
back,
fax
long time
machine?
ago. Yeah, it's kind of like way back then. Instead of the little
Like a
clickies.
flip phone?
Yeah, like actual film.
Crazy thing.
But when you would watch a negative develop, it wasn't just the photo. It slowly started to come in, and that's what a reading is like. It's like slowly starting to figure out what it is that you're seeing. So my process is that I'm clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient. And that translates to I see, hear, and feel energy. I then interpret what it is that I'm seeing, hearing, and feeling, and I pass it on to the person that I'm sitting with, and I explain to them the process. And the reason why I like them to understand it is that I want to leave people better than I find them. And if I've done a reading for someone, and I say, oh my God, I have your dad here, and your dad loves you so much, and he's this, that, it sounds like this amazing thing. And the reality is, Dad is with the person, Dad does love them. But my job as the medium is to give them information to validate that, not to celebrate the process or myself doing it. And I think I try to make sure that they understand how subtle it is, so that when you're not having a reading, which I don't think you need to have a reading, but when you're not having a reading, you recognize that song on the radio, or that when you got pulled to your clock and it's the 11:11, and when you looked at that, it's the birth date or the time they passed. It's little messages in ways that they're letting us know, like, hey, I'm still with you. Like, you're still in the classroom of life, but I'm still with you.
What's been the craziest question that people ask you? Just if they accost you on the street.
The craziest question that people have asked me, well, do you want me to be politically correct or unpolitical?
You can be whatever you want to be.
Well, first I'll give a shout out to South Park and say happy 20th birthday and thank them for making me the douchebag of the universe. That's probably been the most fun, having 12 and 13-year-old kids constantly, every day when they discover the episode. It's like, oh, okay, block. But in some respect, kind of to take it to a place of going, it's cool that I was able to break through to the point that a show like that would actually put me in it, because people would understand who I am and what I do. And I can't tell you how many kids I've actually encountered who did not know who I was until they watched that episode.
Stop it, really?
Swear to God. And then write me back and say, I found you this way, but then I investigated you, and you know what? It really helped me. It helped me a lot because I lost my dad, I lost my brother, I lost my whomever. So things happen in a way that I sit back and I go, maybe not fun to hear, but at the same token, it comes with the subject matter when you do this. So it's like, you gotta suck it up.
But in terms of the future, I mean, do people come up to you and say who's going to win the election? Who's going to do this? What's going to happen with
No.
Brexit?
No, people are much more selfish. They want to know, like,
don't wanna- yeah.
no, they don't want to know big global things. They want to know about, jobs and family and, their kids. They want to know, like, hey, somebody last night just asked me if they were like, hey, is my son going to get into this or is my son going to get into that? And, I kind of feel like I go back to when my first book came out. I was in San Francisco doing a book signing, and it was in a venue that looked a lot like this. And there was a line of people. So I'm sitting at the table. There's a line of people that wrapped all the way around the store, down the stairs, and outside. And there were staircases, like, right in front of me. And I'm watching it happen. This woman comes walking up the staircase, and she's got her arms filled with framed photos. Not photos. I'm talking like framed, big 8x10, 5x7 photos. And she starts running towards me. And as she's running towards me, all I could think of was, is security going to stop this woman? Like, is anybody going to stop her? They didn't. She made it to the table. She drops all her photos, right? And she goes, this is my mom. She just passed from a heart attack. Tell me she's okay. And I looked at her and I went, I can't. And she's like, what do you mean you can't? I said, I'm not making a connection with your mom. But what I can tell you is I believe that she's okay. I believe that she's with you. I said, now, would you want me just to tell you what you want to hear? Or would you want to have a real experience? And she didn't like my answer. She didn't like any of my answer. She wanted the candy. She wanted the cookie. And I'm like, I'm more of an eat your veggies medium. Like, I want you to understand the process. And I think that's what's really important, is to understand how energy works. And you saw with the clip with my daughter, that's how I raise my kids. Like, they live their lives by understanding choices and energy and philosophy and all of that.
Speaking of your daughter, she's an actress.
She is.
You're now known as Olivia's dad.
I'm Olivia's
That is
dad.
your profession now.
That is my profession.
When she goes on auditions or she meets with people in the industry, and the industry, obviously, we all know, can be dicey.
Sure.
And filled with people not looking out for your best interests, that must really help you, right? To get a read on who she's working with and whether the project is a good fit.
Sure. I actually want to empower her. And, whether it's my daughter, my son, my family, my wife, we all kind of look at things in the same way. We all live our lives by trusting our energy and intuition. It's what I want people to live their lives by, recognizing that we have that for a reason. Trust that. And when she's going out on an interview or an appointment, because we won't call them auditions for the reason that we saw, it's important to understand value. And I think everybody needs to understand their value. And if you understand energy, then you can understand how you manage your value. You don't let somebody else tell you what you're worth. You don't let somebody else tell you that you can or cannot, do something. As a family, myself and the kids, we just rewatched 6 seasons of Lost. And the 2 kids loved the character of John Locke because his whole thing is, don't tell me what I can and cannot do, because it puts limitations on something. So the analogies and the metaphors that I might use, whether it's them watching The Flash or if it's them watching Lost or if I'm watching Harry Potter with them, you use everyday analogies to talk about the comparisons of energy, philosophy, free will, and choice.
Yeah, and especially if you're observant, I think, and you really listen to yourself, I think you can get a pretty decent read on people without having any of your skills.
100%. And if you ever meet someone, if you're meeting someone and they make you feel uncomfortable, pay attention to that. Yeah. There is a reason. Don't just go, oh, well, they all like him. No, just be like, there's something that you should pay attention to. And it might be a circumstance, it might be a situation, that person might have had a spat with their partner. It doesn't really matter what it is, but there might be something. Always trust your gut. Trust your gut.
Now, how did you get into this?
How did I get into this? Well, I was 15 years old, and I went to debunk a psychic by the name of Lydia Clark. She was doing readings at my grandmother's home, and I wanted to prove to my family that she would not be able to read me. My dad was a New York City police officer and a career military guy, not into this at all. I mean, zip. And I wasn't allowed to be around the subject matter. At 12, 13 years old, my mom and dad separated. I moved into my grandmother's house, which I say was the hub of paranormal activity. And this woman agreed to come to the house to do a house party under one condition, and the condition was she wanted to meet me. And I was like, what does that mean? And my mom was like, I don't know, but she doesn't do this, and she's coming, and you need to be here, and then don't tell your father, and just be respectful. And then one by one, people went for readings with her, and when they came out, they were blown away. I mean, like, ridiculously blown away. And I'm like, yeah, no, she won't be able to read me. And I went in with I'm not gonna help her. I'm not gonna tell her anything. And she changed my life. I mean, at 15 years old, to have somebody tell you that you're going to be internationally known author, lecturer on television and radio, about her field and that you're going to change the way millions of people look at it at 15, she might as well have said that she took her spacecraft, landed in the backyard. I was like, this woman's crazy. But she wasn't crazy, and I actually wound up doing everything she said.
Huh, that is so interesting. Do you feel that there's a misconception about psychics?
It's funny. If you asked me that question back then, I would say yes. I would think that there was a stereotypical misunderstanding. And then I think we went through like a renaissance where it really became cool in the understanding of it. And now I'm concerned that the pendulum is swinging back into a different place where it might not be seen as being credible. And I say that is that there's a lot of energetic ego that comes into anybody's position when they do something that makes them special. I don't care if you're a musician, if you're an actor, if you're a sports figure, if you're a psychic. If there's something special about you, it activates what I refer to as the inner monster. And your inner monster, I equate to being your ego. And I think once the ego self gets activated on a certain level, no matter what field you're in, you have to be careful that it doesn't stop you from wanting to be better or making you think you've accomplished what you can. It's like, I still feel 32 years in, I am a student. I am in awe of what I get a chance to see and witness. And the moment that I am not, I don't feel like I have the right to do it. So I think it's important to remain a student.
And let me ask you this. When celebrities approach you to do private readings, how do you decide who to do and who not to do?
Okay, so that's a really funny question. I don't like reading celebrities. It's my least favorite thing to do.
Is it because you already know so much about them going in?
Oh God, these are hard questions. No, I usually don't like reading them because there's so many other layers of what you have to get through. It's like they come in with that whole like, I'm a celebrity, like I'm a celebrity. Then you got to get past that. And then you got the layer of, well, I'm a celebrity and there's so much about me that's now out there. So you got to get past that. So people think that reading celebrities, it's actually easy. Oh my God, it's not easy. It's hard because you have to break through so many additional barriers. So I would take, a regular person on top of a celebrity in any way. If I am approached by somebody who's famous, I literally go by my gut feeling. Like it usually comes through somebody else and they'll say, hey, so-and-so wants a reading, would you do that? And then my feeling is either, it's not for me, or yes, I'm supposed to do this. And then I schedule them in, and then I never charge them, but they have to make a donation to a charity. Like, that's my thing.
How much do I love you? No, but seriously.
I don't know, tell me how much you love me. And the
No, I
reason
love
why,
you a lot.
I'm gonna tell you why. I feel like I have a very long waiting list. And it's not appropriate for the celebrity to get a reading over somebody else because they're a celebrity. But if I do get that feeling, then I know that I have the opportunity now that that celebrity has a voice that might be able to raise awareness to what the subject matter is. 9 out of 10 times they will never talk about having the reading, ever. It's like I literally had somebody, very, very well known that I was walking past them at LAX airport and they were looking at me like, please don't approach me, so there's a little bit of that like, okay, no worries.
And how do you decide in terms of regular people who to read or not to read?
There used to be a waiting list, like an actual waiting list, and at one point it was over 8 years long. And I know, insane, absolutely insane. And that's now gone. I literally went in order of the people that called, and unfortunately, some of the people that were on the list wound up actually crossing over, and I wound up reading their families. I know, it's a true story.
It's not funny,
but
funny.
it's actually happened. But now I have an interest list, and what happens is we randomly choose, literally by number. So somebody could be on the interest list for months. Some people could be on there for years. I like it to be universal. I like it to be those who are supposed to get the message. And I do a lot of work with the Evolve community because I feel like they're an educated community, and they really get the subject matter.
That's awesome. And let's turn it over to our audience.
Sure.
Hi, John. So I was wondering, how did you develop your skill? Did you have a mentor, and do you collaborate with other psychics?
So I went back to this woman, Lydia, after she did the reading for me, and I said, I am yours, be my Yoda. And she said, no. And I looked at her and I went, what do you mean, no? And she said, no, you need to find your own way. So I did. I kind of found my way through books. I studied a lot, and then I met a woman by the name of Sandy Anastasi. And she was the only person that can actually claim to be my teacher. But I studied with her, and we're still friends to this day. And she kind of helped give me a lot of the principles upon which I based my teaching and philosophy on.
Next question, please.
John, I was wondering if you've ever noticed a difference or have an opinion on energy in a home, the difference between if someone was murdered in the house or if they just passed away, like from hospice.
We can add one other thing into that. I have actually noticed that energy is energy, and when I first moved into my own home, nobody passed in it, but I was able to sense the energy of the previous owners. Every time I opened up to do readings, I kind of felt like my house was haunted, and I knew that nobody had passed in it. So when you're sensitive to energy, you can feel what's taken place in a location, but it doesn't mean that it's any worse or different. So some people are more sensitive to that. So if they get a glimpse or they see that image or what they're feeling can kind of make them feel worse, but it doesn't have to be a bad thing. And there's something called smudging. And smudging is kind of like cleaning out the energy of a place. And I'm a big advocate of psychic self-defense and protecting your energy in prayer, standing on a foundation of faith. And once you come from all that energy, it's turning the lights on and it keeps everything clean. Thank you.
Next question, please.
Hi, someone had asked if you collaborate with other psychic mediums in the past, and obviously there are some who are famous or were. Have you ever met or collaborated with Theresa Caputo from the Long Island Medium?
I haven't collaborated with her, nor have I met her, but I have collaborated with Shar Margolis quite a bit. Shar and I have a really good rapport. There's another medium that I work with. His name is Jonathan Lewis. We've done double medium groups. Suzanne Northrup is another person. So there's a lot of people that I think come from the same circle of intention that I do. So we kind of vibrate in the same space. So, but yeah, there's been a lot of double medium groups that I've done, which is kind of really interesting because I'll do the first part and they'll do the second part, and to see the same people come through but differently is fascinating. It is really fascinating.
What should people look for when they're looking for a medium?
I think when you're looking for a medium, you don't need to look for somebody who's on TV, radio, written books, or famous. There are a lot of talented people that are out there that can do this work who have no even remote interest in doing anything but their job, which is to do the work. So I think you're looking for someone who gives information and validation, not new age philosophy or what people want to hear. And I think by word of mouth is important. A lot of times a grief therapist, believe it or not, will actually recommend someone because they've had clients that have had great success. So if you're in a bereavement group, if you're in a grief therapist's office or care, that therapist themselves might suggest as a possibility, in addition to regular therapy, how it could help.
And thank you so much. Where can we find Evolve?
You could find Evolve, and actually you can find anything that I'm doing, whether it be Evolve or tours, at johnedward.net. johnedward.net.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.